Welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. Hey gang, interesting story here. China's special forces to station in Zimbabwe build secret underground base to protect natural resource claims. Well, without reading the entire article here, the Silk Road is growing, and it's grown right into Zimbabwe, where they have billions of dollars invested. And now they're laying a claim to all the natural resources in Zimbabwe, and now they're stationing military there to quote unquote protect their interests. Zimbabwe is an interesting country. They've gone through a hyperinflation, a very big one. It's a modern day equivalent of Weimar Germany that happened back in the 30s. Um, it's going through another hyperinflation right now. It just started. And the one that it just went through ended, I think, I'm going to say in 2011. And they've never gone back to a stable currency. They even use Bitcoin and the US dollar for a while. And now they're using a whole bunch of currencies, a whole bunch of local currencies. The US dollar is used there. You know, the physical dollars that we have here in the United States are being used in Zimbabwe as well, but they're also using, like I said, lots of other currencies. I don't think they're using Bitcoin anymore. Um, the fact that they were using Bitcoin probably helped to propel Bitcoin to the highs that we saw back in 2017. But the reason I'm bringing this article up is, first off, I was actually shocked by this. I didn't realize that China was laying claim to natural resources in Zimbabwe. I know AFRICOM, which is a large conglomeration of American and European interests that are laying claim to natural resources in Africa. And that's a larger subject, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Africa is blessed with an enormous amount of natural resources, but the people there and the countries there are in such poverty. Um, so, how did that happen? When you have enormous natural resources, you would think, and by the way, this is common sense, that country would be actually rich because natural resources means a value added economy, right? You have lots of good stuff in the ground that you can make things with, then there should be industry there. There should be, a lot of economic activity there. Well, let's back up a bit and find out why that didn't happen. Well, in Africa, we've had enormous corruption over the years, and it's by the governments there. There's lots of totalitarian governments there, fascist dictatorships, and that's comprises most of the governments in Africa. So what they would do is they would borrow money, from the IMF, from the United States, from other countries, and enrich themselves. The governments would enrich themselves with these loans. The money would never get to the people. It would never go for infrastructure. It would never go for development. It would never go for getting to natural resources so they can start industry. The countries themselves would be poverty stricken while the rulers of the country would be enriched tremendously through these loans. So the loans, when they come due, would basically default to, well, we don't have the money to pay you back, so you guys can, basically have our natural resources. Giving away the natural resources of that country, which technically, from a free-thinking person, would belong to all the people of that country. Since there's so much corruption there, that's never allowed to happen. So I want to talk about the Silk Road now. This is an interesting graphic here. This is a very, very good map to illustrate the growing influence and power of China throughout the world. This is something that I have been expecting. As an American, it makes me a little sad, that China has developed such enormous inroads all over the world, but they had a plan, and they executed the plan virtually flawlessly to offer the world cheap labor to manufacture any goods, any goods that you want. I mean, you could literally go there. Back in the 90s, this was big. Back in the early 2000s, this was big. American corporate business leaders would literally go to China and pick a factory and have them start building things for them. And they would actually have a very big program, complete with I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, in fact, I scratched that. I don't want to talk about that because I know someone who physically went out there, and they would actually have women there, to help quote unquote convince you, that China's the place to manufacture your goods. This is something I think that we should pay attention to. I think that it's largely over. They're in, the manufacture. It's settled. China's the manufacturer of the world now. It has helped their economy tremendously. It's helped them build the largest military in the world. Now, I'm not going to say the best military in the world because I don't think they have that, but they certainly have the largest. 200 million plus people in their military. Now, I shudder to say, there's even mention of a military that size in the Bible. So that's why I pay attention. The inroads to the world from China via the Silk Road are very impressive. The influence China is beginning to have in the world is very impressive. It doesn't escape my attention that Hollywood is, pretty much bowing to whatever China wants now. There's been many examples of that. If you guys want a video on that, we can do that. But they own about half of Hollywood now. And no one here in America really even knows it. But their influence is very well known to those who are paying attention just by watching American cinema. You can actually start seeing this. And like I said, if you guys are interested, comment below and I'll bring up examples of how China's influence in Hollywood is becoming pervasive. It's becoming larger and it's very noticeable. So this is, basically what I was talking about with the Silk Road. But with Zimbabwe actually having Chinese troops, I think that's just the beginning. And China's influence is becoming large in Africa as well now. China's influence is being felt all over the world. Europe feels it. India, Pakistan feels it. Their influence is getting very large in the Middle East, believe you me. The trade for oil deal between Russia and China has made China very powerful as well. It's also enriched Russia. And as free-thinking Americans, we need to be very worried about this when China gets that powerful, and their ideology is very, very different than ours. They have, human rights issues in China that would, make your hair curl. And we choose them to be our number one trading partner when they kill people who are Christian. They kill people who, I'm not going to say they kill people who are deviants, but I think that's probably the case. Sometimes if you're very lucky and if there's enough political influence and if China considers you a disruption, you can be ejected from China and live the rest of your life in another country, never to come back to China again, if you're lucky. But that's something for us to think about. That's something for us to ponder. Why would China be the number one trading partner with the United States when we put value on life and they do not? It's something I ponder all the time. And that's because the world speaks the language of money. Not values, not ethics, not morals, but money. And China was an easy way for America to quote unquote enrich itself by taking advantage of cheap labor. They did not care about the morality of it, the ethics or morality of it. I mean, nothing. It was all about making money. And China knew this, and they knew we would do it. And China was enriched too. By the way, the lives of the average Chinese have been greatly enriched by trade with America and with Europe. But with that wealth they have garnered, They're using it now to expand their operations and start taking over natural resources on other parts of the planet. So this means, and by the way, they're not taking over other countries. What they do is much more insidious. They influence other countries, and basically to make sure that they themselves are enriched. That's what the United States has done for years too, gang. There is something coming in the future where we're going to go head to head on China with something because they're going to encroach on American territory. Or American partners against the interests of America, and then basically they'll find an excuse to start a war. That will not be pretty. But I didn't mean to digress. I just wanted to bring this story to your attention with Zimbabwe. It's very interesting. This is the first time I've seen Zimbabwe be in the news, apart from the fact it had, gone through hyperinflation and is now, right now, as we speak, it is starting a brand new hyperinflation, literally 7 years, maybe 8 years after the old one ended. And it's 100% inflation they saw in 2018, I believe, and it'll probably be higher this year. Or it's 50%, I'm sorry, 50% inflation. So, in other words, that gallon of milk that may have cost them, $2 in 2019 is now going to cost them, or 2018 will cost them $3 in 2019. But it escalates very quickly. So, any rate, that's what I have for you today, gang. I want to say thank you very, very much for stopping by and listening to me rant on things that I think are important that we need to keep our minds, fixated on. These are the stories that are being missed by the media. This is why you guys find that I don't talk about a lot of the big stories that are quote unquote happening in the media, because most of them I believe are distractions, from real things that are happening in the background. But thank you once again. I do appreciate it. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the love you guys have shown the channel. We really do appreciate you. God bless you all.